he's on that kick, and so I don't know. I don't know. I ain't got time for that. Because he just go on and see like me. He didn't want to talk on the phone. He wanted to text. He didn't want to talk. Nah, forget this.
I thought we would wake up one morning and walk on, hear the snow crunching. It fooled me.
Well, if he'd been about 25, 30 miles away, you could have done that.
My brother said he got it. Was that Jonesboro?
Yeah. Eatonton, they got some up that way. Eatonton, Daniel and them had a little bit up there where they were. So. That was a heavy frost out there on the yards out there this morning. It is time to begin our morning Bible study. Good to see each one out this morning, as it is a little bit on the chilly side, but speaking of chilly, it'd be a good day for it. But it is good to have everyone out this morning. A few announcements as we get started. Don't forget that tonight, following the evening services, will be this recognition celebration of the January birthdays. This week we have Johnny Ray on the 14th, which is Tuesday, and Kyler Williams on the 15th. Latest card signing this afternoon, and the area-wide singing is 2 weeks from yesterday. It's a Saturday on the 25th here at the building at 3 o'clock. And we will be having some refreshments following that, so that's like 2 weeks away now. Sure, by now everyone has seen the news about the fires out in California in the LA area. I saw where there was the church building out there in whatever the town was lost. It was caught up in the fire. And there's been several denominational churches out there that have been burned up as well. A lot of people have lost their homes. Some people's lost their lives. It's a bad situation out there in California, so remember those folks. And because our sick list is about the same, don't see any new ones. Anthony, his knee gave way up Wednesday evening. They were getting ready to come to the building, so they did not make it, but I do anticipate them being here today. Peggy is up in Atlanta, and she did go to the doctor up there the other day and still has some ongoing health issues there. I don't see any other new ones in the bulletin. Yeah.
My friend Vicky Dreyer, D-R-E-Y-E-R, is having pretty extensive back surgery this week. She'll be here in Macon for that, but I'm a little scared for her. Nervous for her.
Vicky,
Yeah, Vikki, Dreyer, Dreyer.
Right.
She's been here.
Yeah. Okay. Remember these different ones with their various health issues. Reggie, lead us in a word of prayer to start, please.
Father, I'm so thankful for the many blessings of this life. Thankful for the study of the portion of the word. Pray that we will be attentive to the things that may have to tell us. Pray that we can apply it to our lives and become better Christians. Pray the Lord for this congregation. Pray that you will help us to be successful in all the programs that we have. And we pray for our country. Pray that we will be successful in turning back to a Christian nation as much as possible. Father, we pray that you will be with all those who were mentioned on the sick list, those who are going to have surgeries, those who are recovering from surgeries. Pray for Vicky and Anthony and others who have been mentioned. Pray that, Lord, that you go with all of us through this Bible study and the remainder of this service. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you. Have you ever had any troubles in life, being whatever they may have been? Yeah, probably so. And these troubles could be many, many different things. Some could be more serious than others. But part of living is dealing with the issues that we face from time to time. Again, they're going to vary from person to person, and there could be any variety of things. Today we're going to be looking at dealing with trouble. You know, it is common for us to, from time to time, have troubles. Again, they could be many, many different types of things. It could be sickness. It could be loss of loved ones in terms of death. It could be physical things, you know, break down with your car, or your refrigerator quits, whatever. It could be any type of thing. There's just on and on you could go with the different types of troubles that we may deal with. But whenever we have trouble, when it comes our way, how do we deal with it?
Lots of different ways.
Okay? Pray about it. Yeah. Pray about it. And you're right. You know, we deal with it a lot of different ways, but certainly, depending on what it is, it could be very serious. It could be something minor. But pray about what the situation is. In other words, learn to depend and trust in God. Notice, if you will, in Mark chapter 5, in Mark 5, 21 through 24. It says, "And when Jesus was passed over again by the ship into the other side, much people gathered unto him, and he was nigh unto the sea. And behold, there cometh one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and when he saw him, he fell at his feet, and besought him greatly, saying, My little daughter lieth at the point of death. I pray thee, come and lay thy hands on her, that she may be healed, and she shall live. And Jesus went with him, and much people followed him and thronged him." So, in verses 21 through 24, it's telling us that here's this little girl that is at the point of death, and Jairus, he sees Jesus. he falls at his feet, and it says he besought him greatly. Now, can't you imagine the magnitude of his trying to connect with Jesus here? It says they besought him greatly, pleading, making sure that he got Jesus' attention. He's got a very serious matter to deal with here. And then he goes on, and she was a 12-year-old, and according to Jewish custom, a young girl became a woman at the age of 12. So here she is at the threshold of being classified as a woman. She's facing death. And Jairus was the ruler of the synagogue, and so he was a person of prominence, high esteem. And so, but here he is an individual that is prominent, high esteem. His daughter is ill at the point of death. And what does he do? He thinks of Christ. It says he besought him greatly, trying to, get his attention so that he can come and assist and help as he's dealing with the tragedy that he's facing. Now, but when we think about it, what is the significance of Jairus going to Jesus?
He knew about it, but he also had faith that he could do what.
No doubt.
Obviously seen him do something.
Exactly. No doubt he had heard about Jesus. And so, no question about that. And, how did many of the Jews, what was their feeling toward Jesus? Threatening? Many did not believe he was who he was, and he was, like I say, a threat to them, a heretic, if you will. But one of the qualities here is he obviously had heard about Jesus, and prejudices aside, irregardless of tradition, irregardless of what others may have thought, he besought Jesus. Here is one that possibly, how deep was his belief? It was strong enough that he went to find him. And he laid any prejudices that he might have had, he laid them aside. Here is perhaps a last-ditch effort, if you will, to get someone to help him in this situation. So he had to have some faith that Jesus could do this. And it says he besought him greatly, as we just read a few moments ago. Prejudice was, even then, was an everyday occurrence, much as it is today. Different scenarios, but it still existed back then just like it does today. A person of prominence, how might that person act or respond in the presence of someone like Jesus? Perhaps they may feel entitled. Perhaps they may feel, look how important I am. I'm a person of prominence. Yes, you may be the Christ, but look how successful I am. Depending on the person. They could have somewhat that arrogant type of attitude, but he did not. It says, and we saw in verse 22, when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. Forget the prestige, forget the prominence. He fell at Jesus' feet. And I think that's very, very significant. He humbled himself in the presence of Jesus, even though he himself was a dignified ruler. He humbled himself before Jesus. I read this morning where at the funeral Thursday of President Carter, where Vice President Pence met President Trump, and they greeted one another. First time they'd seen each other since they left the White House 4 years ago. And I was reading where it's just a casual, kind greeting, which was good. But Vice President Pence, in an interview with someone, made a reflection back to the last time they had met some 4 years ago, right at 4 years ago. And that Pence told Trump that I will never regret, and I'm paraphrasing here, I will never regret for doing the right thing. And I'm basically paraphrasing what he said. But the other thing he said was, I will pray for you. And he said in that interview that President Trump says, don't bother to pray for me. And then Pence says, I will never stop. And the point of that was, and is, the arrogance that sometimes people of power and prestige can have. And I certainly hope that President Trump does a great job as our next president. Our country needs it. And I think we're going to see some positive things take place. But if we know his personality, we do know that he can be an arrogant individual. But that was what Vice President said, Prince said, that President Trump had told him. So, regardless of how powerful we may be, there's others that deserve our respect. And certainly God and Christ. Reverence them, honor them, respect them for who they are and for what they've done. Many today will allow their esteem in the community, if you will. They will often allow them to hinder their spiritual development because of how it may affect their social status in the community. Here he was, a ruler, bound before the Lord. Forget the social status. Humility is demonstrated here. But then notice what it said in verses 35 through 43 of chapter 5 of Mark. While he yet spake, there came from the ruler of the synagogue house certain which said, Thy daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the master any further? So they come and say, listen, your daughter, she's died. Don't bother him anymore. She's gone. But as soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, he said unto the ruler of the synagogue, Be not afraid, only believe. And he suffered no man to follow him, save Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And he cometh to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and seeth the tumult and them that wept and wailed greatly. Yeah, they're grieving. the child has died, they're emotional. We can understand that. And when he was come in, he said unto them, why make you this to do and weep? The damsel is not dead, but sleepeth. And they laughed him to scorn. But when he had put them all out, he taketh the father and the mother of the damsel, and said to them that were with him, and entereth in where the damsel was lying. And he took her by the hand, and said unto her, Tabitha, come, which is being interpreted, Damsel, I say unto thee, arise. And straightway she arose and walked, for she was of the age of 12 years old, and they were astonished with great astonishment. And he charged them straitly that no man should know it, and he commanded that something should be given her to eat. So we see here that she had died, but Jesus says she's asleep. Jesus has compassion, but he tells them, you've got to believe. Believe, as we saw here in verse 36. Be not afraid, only believe. Only believe what in verse 36? Be not afraid, only believe. Who Jesus is and what he can do. Goes back to what Trish was talking about earlier. The faith. Have belief, have faith that this is the Christ and that he can do this. If he approached him, fell to his knees, basically begging and pleading, and Jesus says that at the time he does this, as far as he knows, she's sick at the point of death. But then shortly thereafter, we find out that they come and say, well, she's died. Jesus says, believe. Believe. Have faith. Believe that I am he and that I am capable of doing this. Believe. And of course he did. So then, that is one example of dealing with trouble. But then we have another one in the book of Job. In Job, in Job 1, 21 and 22, Job 1, 21 and 22. When we think about Job, what do we know about him? What all did he lose as everything was taking place with him? He lost everything. Everything. In Job chapter 1, 21 and 22, and he said, naked I came out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all of this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. So whenever Job is faced with the troubles that he's facing, and they were some severe problems. He lost all. He lost his possessions. He lost his family. How was his health? What happened to his health? He was covered with boils. Have you ever had a boil? Perhaps. I know I've had one or two over the years, and I was never covered. But if you've had a boil, how comfortable are they? They're not. They're not. That can be very, very painful. And, can cause great discomfort. So he was covered with boils, and he lost everything that he had, his possessions, his family, and on we could go. But in all of this, he does not curse God. That is a strong indication of his faith in God. He did not curse God. But now, we know from Job 37 that, later on he begins to question God, but Elihu tells him to fear God in Job 37. Tells him he needs to fear God. He begins to question God. He tells him to fear God. But Job, he's a great example of how to deal with the struggles that we deal with. In Job 42, in Job 42:12, so the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. And he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys, and 7 sons and 3 daughters. So Job humbles himself before God, and God blesses him with more than he had in the beginning. Faith, trust in God. Very difficult circumstances that he was dealing with, and yet, as difficult as it was, he remained true to God. What did Job's wife tell him to do? Curse God and die. But he didn't do that. Now, he was challenged. It was difficult, but he endured. Well, another one to consider, and this is more in our generation, if you will. When I say that, and we're talking about 150 years ago, some of you may remember it, but there's a song that we sing sometimes, "It Is Well With My Soul." Beautiful song with a lot of meaning. Individual named Horatio Spafford, 1828, 1888. He was a Chicago attorney, and he had invested heavily in real estate along the shore of Lake Michigan. And we perhaps have heard of the Great Fire of 1871. That Great Fire of 1871, it is said to have wiped out all of his beholdings. And in 1873, he had planned a trip to England for his family, but due to unexpected business developments, he remained in Chicago, but he sent his wife and 4 daughters on without him. They said on November the 22nd, on their trip, their ship was struck by an English vessel, and it sank in 12 minutes, killing over 200 people. He learned about the tragedy, and he said that his wife cabled her husband and said, "Saved alone your wife." Now, consider what had happened previously. They had lost all of his land developments and all. That had been gone. And his wife and 4 daughters, they're on this ship. They're involved in an accident, and the 4 daughters get killed. Now this is a true situation here now. They get killed, and she sends a note, "Saved alone, your wife. I'm the only one left." So he gets on the very next available ship going to where she is, and it says, one night the captain told him, "I believe we are now passing over the spot where that ship went down." And they says that is where he penned the word that we often sing, "When sorrows like sea billows roll." He penned that song. You know, as we consider the song, it says it's worth noting that it does not dwell on the sorrows of life. And the 3rd verse of the song talks about, the attention of the redemptive work of Christ and the anticipated return of the Lord. And so in spite of personal tragedy, he could say, "It is well with my soul." Again, that's a song that we sometimes sing. And perhaps when we sing that song, maybe we have a different perspective. But the point still applies. This was a true tragic event that took place in this individual's life. And we too face difficult times. Things happen. And sometimes things happen that we just don't understand. Don't understand how it happened, why it happened. Many times people have a tendency to try and blame God, as we mentioned the other day. But he says, don't deal in the past. Look to the future. It is well with my soul. People grieve with the loss of a loved one in different ways. And that's okay. That's understandable. But whenever an individual, as difficult as it may be, when that individual is overtaken so greatly with the struggles and the grief that they can't function, that's a problem. That's a serious problem. And it's very difficult to deal with. And that person certainly needs to trust on God. But how our grieving, nothing wrong with grieving, of course, but our distress doesn't change the events. And that's part of what he has penned in this song is, try and put it behind and move on. It's not easy to do. People sometimes need other people to help them with it. Sometimes they may even need medication for it, depending on the severity of whatever the situation might be. But we all have difficult times in life. Varies, of course, from individual to individual.
Well, that's one of the times that you really use your faith and go down and pray. Because you got a point right there. That's something you can't change, something you can't do. But you know prayer changes things.
Right. We can't go back and change what has happened.
Right.
But we can pray for comfort.
Exactly.
We can pray for guidance, for God's blessings.
Will be done.
Yeah, absolutely. In Matthew 11:28-30, as we face the struggles of life, and we all have them, notice what he says in Matthew 11. You're familiar with these verses. Come to me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. You know, as we go through life, we need to recognize our need for Jesus. How dependent we are on Him and on the Father. It's not about us. It's about our dependence and our recognition that we're not all powerful. That we have our limitations. And we need to recognize on a daily basis our needs as far as the troubles and the sufferings and the things that we encounter as we go through life. Notice 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. 1 Peter 5. First Peter 5, 6 and 7. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon Him, for He cares for you. Humble yourself. For some folks, that's hard to do. Humble ourselves. 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. Humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in due time. Cast your cares upon Him, for He cares for you. So, as we saw in Matthew 11, 28 through 30, and here in 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7, Jesus cares. The Lord cares. He says, cast your cares upon Him. He's there for us. And oftentimes, perhaps, we don't recognize that. We're so independent, want to do things ourselves without help, not recognizing or realizing our dependence upon the Lord. He's never away from us. He knows our needs. He knows our struggles. And He's going to be there for us. So, there we are this morning, a little lesson on dealing with problems. And certainly we all have them. And as we continue to go through life, we're going to continue to have struggles from time to time. Let the Lord help us with whatever our struggles might be. All right, we will pick back up here in just a few moments.
How are you? Like your hair?
Thank you.
I got a hat. Not expensive as yours.
Well, it's got to have your flavor.
It's the only water I can find wrapped around a
But then again, back in that time, he was having them to work. Yeah, my dad had that kid. He was having them like work. Think about it,
A lot of stuff going around right now. James, you getting stuff to place? Well, just trying it up.
I didn't want any.
I wouldn't mind a little bit if I didn't have to get out in it.
I was glad. I've been in there before, too bad. Nasty for myself.
Yeah.
Did it.
That is parents live in Libya, southwest Atlanta. They had family house ready to close up, but they're all in. I guess it ice up on too.
Hey, bud.
Fell.
You all right?
Top of the cars.
At least you ain't born.
Yeah.